The lobby of the Kincaid Crown Resort was designed to make ordinary people whisper. A cathedral of glass and limestone, a chandelier the size of a fishing boat, a wall of living greenery that smelled like rain. At 6:30 in the morning, the place should have felt calm. Quiet piano music, coffee drifting from the brass and marble cafe, the soft roll of suitcases. Instead, it felt like a courtroom that had already decided the verdict. Near the concierge desk, a woman in a cream coat stood with her arms crossed like a judge. Diamonds flashed at her ears, a silk scarf hung at her throat like a ribbon on a gift. Her voice cut through the lobby, bright and cruel. "I want her out of this hotel. Now." 2 security guards hovered close, stiff and eager. The night manager, Trent Morrow, tie too tight, smile too practiced, kept nodding like a puppet whose strings were pulled from above. And in the center of it all stood Lena Park, still wearing her housekeeping uniform, hands trembling at her sides. She wasn't crying, not yet, but her face had that look that came when someone was trying very hard not to fall apart in public. Trent's voice rose to carry. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for theft. Ms. Park, you were assigned to the Voss suite. The item is missing. We have reason to believe—" "You have no reason," Lena said quietly. Her accent was soft, not heavy. English learned the hard way, night classes, restaurant orders, borrowed library books. She held herself straight, like her spine was a promise, but the lobby had already shifted. Guests who were pretending to check out leaned closer, phones lifted. A couple in matching athleisure stared like this was entertainment included in their resort fee. The woman in the cream coat, Madeleine Voss, tilted her head, eyes glittering with satisfaction. "I'm sorry," she said, and the words dripped with fake sweetness. "Is she arguing?" One guard stepped toward Lena, hand hovering near her elbow like she was a danger. "Ma'am," he murmured to Trent, "should we escort her to the back office?" Lena swallowed. "Please, I didn't—" "Open your bag," Madeleine said. Lena blinked. "My bag?" Madeleine's smile widened. "Your little bag, the one you bring to work. I don't want excuses. I want my ring." A ring. That single word changed the air. Not a missing wallet, not a misplaced keycard. A ring meant romance, money, status, something people felt entitled to protect with sharp teeth. Trent cleared his throat. "Ms. Voss, of course we'll handle this privately. No!" Madeleine snapped, and her sweet mask slid off for a second to reveal something harder. "I want everyone to see what happens when you let thieves into a 5-star hotel." Lena's cheeks went pale. She looked around, searching for one friendly face, one person willing to say stop. But most people looked away, afraid of being pulled into the blast radius of a wealthy woman's anger. And at the far edge of the lobby, partly hidden behind a column of stone, Graham Kincaid watched it all unfold. He didn't look like a man who owned anything. No entourage, no flashy suit. Just a dark coat and a calm posture. Like he belonged in every room, because he had learned how to move through rooms without asking permission. He had built his life the same way he built businesses. Quietly, patiently, with an eye for structures people ignored. Systems, incentives, blind spots, and right now the system in front of him was screaming something ugly. A resort he had invested in, his name stamped on the brochures, his money poured into its renovations, was humiliating a young woman in public to appease a guest. He'd heard stories like this before, in boardrooms, in lawsuits, in whispered employee complaints filtered through management layers until they arrived softened and sanitized. But this wasn't sanitized. This was raw. Trent waved a hand and a security guard moved to Lena's side. "Ms. Park, for the sake of clearing this up, please open your bag." Lena stared at the guard's hand like it was a trap. Then, with fingers that didn't quite obey her, she unzipped the worn canvas tote she carried every day. A lunch container, a small Bible with a ribbon marker, a pair of gloves, hand lotion, a folded photo of a boy with a crooked grin. Madeline leaned forward like she wanted to smell fear. The guard rummaged, careful at first, then faster, as he felt the eyes on him. Nothing. He paused, confused, and looked at Trent. Trent's smile held, but the corners tightened. "Search her pockets." Lena flinched. "Please." Madeline's voice sharpened. "If she's clean, great. If not, I want the police, and I want her deported." The word deported landed like a punch. Lena's eyes flashed. "I am legal," she said, voice cracking just slightly. "I have papers. I have—" Trent raised a hand as if calming a child. "Ms. Park, we're not making assumptions. We're just humiliating her," a voice said from behind. The lobby turned. Graham stepped forward. He didn't announce himself. He didn't need to. Something in his presence shifted the room, the way weather shifts when thunder rolls in. Trent blinked. "Sir, I'm sorry. This is a staff matter." Graham's eyes stayed on Lena. "Did you take the ring?" Lena looked up at him, startled as if she hadn't expected anyone to ask her directly. "No," she said. "I didn't." Madeline scoffed. "Of course she says no." Graham's gaze slid to Madeline, measuring her the way he measured numbers on a balance sheet. "And you're certain it's theft?" Madeline lifted her chin. "It was on the nightstand. I went to the shower. I came back. It was gone. The only person who entered was her." Graham nodded slowly. "The only person you saw enter." Madeline's smile sharpened again. "Are you calling me a liar?" Graham didn't answer that. He turned to Trent. "Where are the camera feeds?" Trent's Adam's apple bobbed. We checked. There was a camera issue on that hallway last night. Maintenance is reviewing." Graham held Trent's gaze until Trent looked away. A camera issue. Convenient. Too convenient. Graham could feel it, the faintest tug, like a thread on a sweater. Pull it, and you might unravel something bigger than a missing ring. He looked back at Lena. "What time did you clean that suite?" Lena swallowed, collecting herself. I didn't, not last night. I was assigned floors 6 and 7. The Voss suite is on 9. Trent snapped. "That's not accurate. The schedule shows—" Lena's eyes narrowed. "The schedule was changed this morning. I saw it. My name was not there yesterday." A murmur ran through the lobby. Madeleine rolled her eyes. "Now she's claiming a conspiracy." Graham felt the tug again. Thread, sweater. He turned to Trent. "Bring me the schedule. The real one. The one from last night." Trent hesitated, then forced a laugh. "Sir, with respect, we can't just—" Graham's voice stayed quiet. "Yes, you can." Trent's face shifted, fear mixed with recognition. He knew that tone. It was the tone of a man who didn't argue in public because he didn't need to. Graham didn't say his last name. He didn't flash credentials. He simply waited. But Madeline wasn't the type to wait. She stepped forward, finger pointed at Lena like a weapon. "Listen, I don't care who you are. I want my ring, and I want her fired." Lena's chin lifted. "I need my job." Madeline's laugh was cruel. "Then you shouldn't steal." Lena's hands clenched. Her voice stayed steady, but the pain leaked through the cracks. "I didn't steal anything." "Then where is it?" Madeline snapped. Silence. Phones hovered, recording. Trent, desperate to end the scene, nodded to security. "Take Ms. Park to the back office. We'll—" Graham stepped between them, not aggressively, simply, "There." "You will not touch her," he said. Trent froze. The guard froze. Even the air froze. Graham turned slightly, speaking to Lena like the lobby wasn't full of eyes. "Do you want to clear your name?" Lena's throat worked. "Yes." "Then we do it properly," Graham said. "Not in front of guests with phones, not with threats, with evidence." Madeline's voice rose. "Evidence? My ring is evidence." Graham's gaze stayed level. A missing object is an accusation. Evidence is what proves who moved it, when, and why. He looked at Trent again. Private room, now. And I want the security director. Trent nodded too fast. Yes, of course. Madeline huffed, but she followed. She had the confidence of someone used to winning by volume. Lena hesitated. One glance at the phones, the faces, the humiliation. Graham leaned in slightly and spoke low enough that only she could hear. "Hold your head up," he said. "The truth likes light." Lena's eyes flickered, something like hope trying to survive. Then she walked, and Graham followed. The back office smelled like stale coffee and cheap air freshener, an insult to the perfect lobby outside. Trent closed the door. 2 security guards stood by it like bouncers. Madeline paced, tapping her nails on her phone. Lena stood near a chair, hands folded in front of her like she was in church. Graham remained near the wall, studying. He wasn't here to play hero with speeches. He was here to find the shape of the machine that had produced this moment. Machines didn't run on emotion. They ran on incentives. Who benefited from Lena being blamed? Madeline wanted her ring, and the spectacle suggested she wanted more than that. She wanted dominance, control, maybe a payout, maybe a story to tell. Trent wanted the problem gone fast. Bad press killed hotels faster than broken plumbing, and somewhere in between those motives lived the kind of corruption that thrived in quiet corridors. The door opened. A man entered, broad-shouldered, buzz-cut, wearing a security badge like a shield. "Security Director Mark Rell," he said. "Mr.?" Trent's voice cracked. "Mr. Kincaid." Mark Rell's eyes widened a fraction. "Sir." Madeline's pacing stopped. She stared at Graham. Graham nodded once. "Ms. Voss says her ring is missing and Ms. Park stole it," Madeline snapped. "I didn't say says. It's missing." And she did. Graham looked at Lena. "Tell him your version." Lena took a breath. "I did not clean that suite last night," she said. "My schedule was floors 6 and 7. My supervisor knows. The schedule changed this morning." Trent opened his mouth, but Graham lifted a finger, one small motion that shut him down. Graham turned to Mark. "What do the cameras show?" Mark cleared his throat. "There's an issue. Camera 9 Hall B went offline for about 40 minutes last night." Madeline smiled like she'd been handed a gift. "See? Convenient, right? That's what thieves do." Graham's voice stayed calm, or what someone does when they don't want to be seen. Mark hesitated. "Maintenance said it was a power flicker." Graham's eyes narrowed. "A power flicker that only affected one hallway camera." Mark's jaw tightened. "Sir, I agree it's unusual, but without footage..." Graham stepped closer. "Without footage, we don't humiliate an employee. We isolate variables." Madeline scoffed. "Isolate variables? This isn't a science experiment." Graham's gaze snapped to her. "Everything is a science experiment when you're trying to separate truth from performance." Madeline's cheeks flushed. "I want the police." Graham nodded. "We'll involve law enforcement when we have a chain of custody. Right now, we have a missing ring and a lot of noise." He looked at Mark. "I want a full export of camera logs, access logs for that floor, key card entries, and the housekeeping schedule history. Not a screenshot, not a summary. The raw data." Mark blinked. "Sir, our system..." Graham's tone didn't change, but the room felt colder. "Your system will do it." Mark nodded once. Slow. "Yes, sir." Trent swallowed. "Mr. Kincaid, with respect, these are internal records. We have guest privacy to consider." Graham turned to him. "Guest privacy is not a shield for wrongdoing." Trent tried to smile. "Of course not. I just mean..." Graham cut him off. "You mean you want it handled quietly?" Trent's eyes darted to Madeline, then back. "Yes, sir." Graham held his gaze. Quiet is how rot spreads. Madeline slammed her phone on the table. This is outrageous. Are you accusing me now? Graham looked at her. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm investigating. If you want your ring back, you should want the same. Madeline's lips pressed into a thin line. Graham turned to Lena. Do you have anywhere safe to go today? Lena hesitated. I can go home. And lose your job by noon, Madeline said, sweet again. What a shame. Graham ignored her. Home is fine if you feel safe, he said to Lena, but you're not going alone. Lena looked confused. Graham nodded toward Mark. Assign a female supervisor to accompany Ms. Park to retrieve her things. No one touches her. No one speaks to her. She leaves with dignity. Trent sputtered. Sir, we can't. Graham's gaze landed on Trent like a weight. You can. Trent's shoulders sagged. Yes, sir. Lena's eyes glistened. She blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall. Graham lowered his voice just enough to soften it. I'm going to find out what happened, he said. Lena's lips trembled. Why would you help me? Graham paused. Because the hotel was his, because humiliation like this was a disease, because if he let this go, he was financing cruelty. But he didn't say any of that. He simply said, because it's wrong. And for a second, Lena's face, so tense, so braced, shifted into something like relief. Then Mark escorted her out. Madeline watched her leave with the satisfaction of someone convinced the story had already ended. But Graham had learned something in 20 years of building companies. Stories don't end when powerful people say they do. They end when the truth runs out of places to hide. Outside, the resort service road curved toward a small cluster of buildings. Laundry facilities, maintenance sheds, employee parking. Beyond that, the highway ran through dark pines into the nearest town, Ashford Ridge. Population, small enough that secrets didn't disappear. They just changed hands. Graham drove alone, hands steady on the wheel. He could have stayed in the resort's penthouse suite, made calls, issued orders, but real problems didn't get solved from a distance. They got solved by seeing the corners where people thought no one was looking. He passed the employee parking lot, already half full with early shift cars. People arriving with lunch bags and tired faces, ready to scrub toilets and fold towels for guests who would never learn their names. He saw a woman in a housekeeping uniform sitting in her car with her head against the steering wheel, maybe praying, maybe trying not to cry. He kept driving. 5 minutes later, he pulled into the gravel lot of a diner that looked like it had survived every decade since the 1950s through sheer stubbornness. A neon sign buzzed, "Ruth's Place." Inside, the air smelled like bacon, burnt toast, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. A bell jingled as Graham entered. A few locals glanced up, then back down. Out-of-towners stood out in Ashford Ridge. Behind the counter, a woman in her 60s wiped a mug with the precision of someone who'd been doing it long enough to do it blind. Her hair was silver, pulled into a bun. Her eyes were sharp, but not unkind. "Sit wherever," she called, voice like sandpaper softened by warmth. Graham slid into a booth by the window. He didn't open a menu. The woman approached, coffee pot in hand. "You look like trouble," she said. Graham's mouth twitched. "That obvious?" In this town, the only men who show up alone at 7 in the morning wearing a coat like that are either lost or looking, she said, and poured coffee without asking. "So, which are you?" Graham watched the steam rise. "Looking." She studied him a beat longer. "Name?" "Kincaid." Her eyebrows lifted. "As in the resort?" Graham nodded. She set the pot down slowly. "Well, that explains the trouble." Graham didn't smile. "A woman was accused of theft this morning." Ruth's expression hardened. "Lena." Graham looked up. "You know her." "Everybody knows her," Ruth said. "She's the one who tips my waitress even when she can't afford it. The one who picks up trash outside without being asked. The one who brings her boy in here on Sundays after church and orders pancakes like they're a celebration." Graham felt something settle in his chest. An anger that wasn't explosive, just heavy. Ruth slid into the booth opposite him without asking permission. "Let me guess," she said. "Some rich woman lost something and needed a scapegoat." Graham nodded. Ruth's eyes flashed. "They always pick the ones who don't fight back." "She fought back," Graham said. Ruth's mouth tightened. "Good." Graham hesitated, then said, "I'm going to investigate." Ruth leaned forward. "Listen to me, Mr. Kincaid. Your hotel has a sickness. You think you can fix it with policies and cameras." Graham didn't argue. Ruth tapped the table with one finger. "Here's what fixes sickness." She held his gaze. "Truth." Then she added quieter, "And someone willing to pay the price to drag it into the light." Graham exhaled. "You sound like you've seen this before." Ruth gave him a look that said, "You have no idea." "I've watched this town bow to money since before you learned to tie your shoes," she said. "And I've watched money destroy people who did nothing wrong." She slid a plate of toast toward him. "Eat. You're going to need patience." Graham didn't touch the toast. "Why do you care about her?" Ruth's expression softened. "Because somebody has to." She pointed at the small Bible peeking from his coat pocket. A gift from his mother, he carried more as a habit than a statement. "Besides," Ruth said, "I've learned something." Graham waited. Ruth's voice lowered, almost gentle. "The truth always leaves a trail. The prideful just don't want to follow it." The words landed like a mantra, a tool. Truth leaves a trail. Graham nodded once, memorizing it. Because trails were what he hunted. Back at the resort, Graham didn't storm into offices like a king. He moved like a strategist. By 10 a.m., he had done 3 things. He put a quiet hold on all digital deletions, camera retention, keycard logs, housekeeping schedule edits. He arranged a routine investor audit for that afternoon, which gave him legal cover to access systems. He called 2 people he trusted more than the resort's management. The first was Elias Crane, a former corporate security lead who had once protected Graham's assets in a hostile acquisition that turned into a literal break-in attempt. Elias was calm, methodical, and deeply allergic to shortcuts. The second was Priya Shah, a compliance attorney who treated facts like sacred objects. She didn't just want the truth. She wanted it preserved in a way that could survive lawyers with sharp teeth. By noon, both were on their way. Graham stood in the glass corridor outside the security office, watching staff move. Housekeepers pushing carts like ships. Maintenance workers carrying ladders. Guests in sunglasses and expensive sweaters wandering like the world was built for them. Every system had choke points. The security office was one of them. Inside, Security Director Mark Rell looked like a man who hadn't slept. "Mr. Kincaid," he said, standing quickly, "we've pulled the logs you requested." "But—" Graham held up a hand. "Not yet." Mark blinked. Graham's voice stayed polite. "Don't hand anything to me until my counsel arrives. If there's corruption, you don't want your fingerprints on the wrong file, and neither do I." Mark swallowed. "Understood." Graham stepped closer. "Tell me something, Mark. Who has access to the DVR retention settings?" Mark hesitated. "Me. Trent. IT. And maintenance supervisors for hardware issues?" "How many maintenance supervisors?" "3, Mark said, "but only one handles camera hardware directly." "Name?" Mark's eyes flicked down. "J. Kim." Graham paused. "Korean name." "Bring him to me," Graham said. Mark's eyebrows lifted. "Sir, Jay is a good man." Graham's gaze stayed level. Then he'll help. Mark nodded. Yes, sir. Jay arrived 15 minutes later, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. He was in his late 30s, hair neatly trimmed, eyes attentive. He didn't look nervous. He looked cautious, the way someone looks when they've learned that stepping wrong around power gets you crushed. Mr. Kincaid, Jay said, bowing his head slightly. Graham shook his hand. Thank you for coming. I'll be direct. A camera in hallway 9B went offline last night. Jay nodded slowly. Yes. How? Jay hesitated. System log shows power dip. A power dip that affected only one camera. Jay's jaw tightened. That is unusual. Graham leaned back against a desk. Unusual doesn't happen by accident. Jay met his gaze, weighing what to say. Then Jay spoke carefully. There are ways. Graham waited. Jay continued. Some cameras have local power injector. If someone disconnect for short time, it looks like flicker. Then reconnect. System may not alert loud. Graham nodded. Who knows that? Jay hesitated again. Maintenance people, security, IT. Trent, Graham asked. Jay's eyes flickered. Trent knows many things. Graham took that in. Did you disconnect it? Jay shook his head. No, sir. Graham watched his face. No flinch, no panic, just a steady honesty. Graham nodded once. All right. Then Graham did something most powerful men didn't do. He lowered his voice. Jay, I'm not here to punish the wrong person. I'm here to protect the right one. Jay's shoulders eased a fraction. Graham said, if someone did this, they may assume nobody will understand certain conversations. I need to know if you've heard anything. Jay's eyes sharpened. Heard? Graham nodded. In your language? Jay's mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, the room hummed with unspoken fear. Then Jay said quietly, I heard something this morning. Graham's heart rate didn't change, but his focus tightened. Tell me. Jay looked toward the closed door, then back. In service corridor, 2 men. They speak Korean. They not know I am behind them. Graham leaned in slightly. What did they say? Jay swallowed. One said, backup file. Dubian J. Pale, second file. He said it like joke, like nobody find. Graham's eyes narrowed. Second file. Jay nodded. He said, make it look like camera died. And he said, she's perfect. He meant the girl. Lena, Graham said. Jay's gaze dropped. Yes. Graham's voice stayed calm, but something cold moved beneath it. Did they mention names? Jay shook his head. No names, but one voice. I think from security. Another, maybe IT. I'm not sure. Graham nodded. You did the right thing telling me. Jay's eyes lifted, surprised. I don't want trouble. Graham's expression softened slightly. Trouble already exists, he said. The question is who it lands on. Then Graham said, you're part of my team now. Jay blinked. Team? Graham nodded. To find the second file. Jay hesitated. If they erase, they'll try, Graham said. And if they do, Jay said, then no proof. Graham's gaze hardened. Then we move faster. By 2 p.m., Elias Crane and Priya Shah arrived. Elias was tall, wearing a plain jacket, eyes scanning exits the moment he stepped into the resort. He moved like a man who had learned to treat every hallway as a potential trap. Priya carried a leather portfolio and an expression that said she had already decided everyone in the building was lying until proven otherwise. Graham gathered them in a private conference room off the administrative wing. Glass walls, neutral art, a table too shiny. A room designed to look clean even when decisions inside it were dirty. He laid out the situation in crisp sentences. Accusation of theft. Missing diamond ring. Employee says schedule was altered. Camera went offline for 40 minutes. We suspect sabotage. Jay heard talk of a second file backup. Priya opened her portfolio. We need chain of custody the moment we touch anything, she said. If this ends in court, the evidence must be bulletproof. Elias nodded. And we need to assume someone is watching us, he said. If they think we're close, they'll move. Graham looked at them. Exactly. Then he drew a simple map on a notepad. The resort like a rectangle with lines marking service corridors, elevators, data closets. This place runs on two worlds, he said. The guest world and the staff world. People commit crimes in the staff world because guests never see it. Elias leaned in. Where's the DVR hardware? Mark Rell had given Graham the details. A secure closet behind the security office with network storage for camera footage. It backed up to a server rack in a data closet managed by IT, supposedly secure, but secure meant something different when people inside had keys. Graham said, primary storage is in security, backups route through IT. Priya's pen tapped. And the second file? Jay, sitting quietly, spoke up. System sometimes makes hidden backup when power lost, like safety. Not many know. Elias's eyes narrowed. A crash dump style backup. Jay nodded. Yes, it's there until overwritten. Priya looked at Graham. How long until overwrite? Graham had asked Mark earlier. 24 hours, Graham said. Sometimes less, depending on storage use. Priya's expression sharpened. Then we're racing a clock. Graham nodded. And the people who caused this know it. Elias asked, what's the objective? Graham's answer was immediate. Clear Lena's name with proof. Expose whoever orchestrated this. Protect the employee base. And prevent a payout scheme that would bleed this resort dry. Priya's brow furrowed. Payout scheme? Graham's eyes flicked to the window where guests strolled like nothing mattered. Madeline Voss isn't just angry, he said. She's performing. She wants leverage, possibly a settlement, possibly ownership influence. Elias leaned back. So we treat this like a heist, he said. Except we're stealing the truth back. Graham's mouth tightened. Exactly. Priya opened her laptop. Plan, she said. Graham's voice took on that mission tone Ruth had described, someone willing to pay the price. Plan A, official extraction, he said. We request logs and footage through Mark and IT with Priya documenting. If they cooperate, we win clean. Elias raised a hand. And if they don't? Graham's eyes turned cold. Plan B, mirror capture. We clone the relevant storage drive under legal authority as investor audit with video recording and signed witness statements. We preserve integrity, Priya nodded. Still clean if executed properly. Elias asked, and if they try to destroy the backup before we get there? Graham's voice lowered. Plan C, field operation. We intercept the physical hardware if necessary. Priya frowned. That's risky. Graham nodded. So, we keep it as last resort. Elias's eyes sharpened. We need surveillance on the surveillance people, he said. Who's most likely to move evidence? Graham looked at Mark Rell's file. Trent Morrow, IT manager, night security supervisor, guest relations director. He said one name. Trent. Jay's jaw tightened. Priya's pen scratched. Then we start there. At 3 p.m., Graham walked into the IT office with the calm authority of a man delivering bad weather. The IT manager, Dustin Hale, stood too fast. Mr. Kincaid, this is unexpected. Graham smiled politely. That's the point. Priya stepped in behind him. Elias hung back, eyes scanning the room. USB ports, drawers, screens. Graham said, we're doing a retention audit. Dustin blinked. A retention audit? Priya's voice was crisp. Digital retention and access logs, as part of standard investor oversight. Dustin forced a laugh. Of course, we can provide reports. Not reports, Priya corrected. Exports. Dustin's eyes flickered. That may take time. Graham's tone stayed friendly. Then start now. Dustin's hands moved to his keyboard. Certainly. Elias's eyes narrowed. He leaned toward Graham and murmured, "He's stalling." Graham nodded. "I know." Graham watched Dustin's fingers. Too many clicks, too many window switches. He wasn't just searching, he was buying seconds. Graham stepped closer. "Dustin," he said, still polite, "do you know why I'm here?" Dustin swallowed. To ensure the system is functioning." Graham smiled faintly. "No, I'm here because someone is using your system to ruin an employee's life." Dustin's face went blank. Graham kept his voice even. "If you're innocent, the logs clear you. If you're involved, the logs bury you." Dustin's hand trembled slightly on the mouse. Priya said, "We're capturing the export process on video. Anything you delete now becomes evidence of destruction." Dustin looked up, eyes wide. "I wouldn't," Graham's voice tightened. "Then don't." Dustin nodded quickly. Okay. He began the export. 5 minutes 10. The progress bar crawled like it hated them. Elias's phone vibrated. He glanced, then leaned close to Graham. "Movement," Elias murmured. "Trent just left the admin wing and headed toward security." Graham's jaw tightened. Plan A was already being challenged. Graham looked at Priya. "We may need to split." Priya nodded once. "Elias goes with you. I stay here and document the export." Graham turned to Jay. "With me?" Jay hesitated, then nodded. Graham's voice lowered. "We're going to the DVR room." The security wing sat behind a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Graham didn't hesitate. He swiped Mark Rell's temporary access card, given willingly after Graham explained chain of custody, and stepped into the staff corridor where carpets became industrial tile and the air smelled like metal and bleach. Elias moved like a shadow beside him. Jay followed, face tense. They rounded a corner and saw Trent Morrow outside the security office door, speaking low to a night shift supervisor. Trent froze when he saw Graham. His smile snapped into place. "Mr. Kincaid, we were just going into the DVR room?" Graham asked. Trent's smile wobbled. "No, sir, we were just reviewing the incident." Elias's voice was calm. "Then you won't mind stepping aside." Trent's eyes flashed with annoyance. "Excuse me?" Graham's gaze stayed steady. "Trent, step aside." For a moment, Trent looked like he might argue. Then he saw Elias, calm, strong, not a resort employee, not someone Trent could bully. Trent swallowed and moved back. Graham pushed into the security office. Mark Rell stood up fast. "Sir?" Graham raised a hand. "Lockdown," he said. "No one touches the DVR until Priya arrives." Mark nodded, face tight. "Understood." Trent stepped in behind them. "Mr. Kincaid, this is unnecessary." "We're already handling—" Graham cut him off. "I watched you humiliate an employee this morning. Don't tell me you're handling anything." Trent's cheeks flushed. "We have to protect guests." Graham's voice went sharp. "You protect revenue, don't dress it up as virtue." Silence. Mark cleared his throat. "Sir, the DVR storage is in the closet. We can—" A beep cut through the room. Jay's head snapped toward a small monitor. The camera system status board flickered. Then a red warning appeared. "Retention cleanup initiated." Elias swore under his breath. "That's not normal." Jay's eyes widened. "They trigger manual cleanup." Graham's stomach tightened. "How long?" Jay was already moving, fingers flying on the keyboard. "If they choose, they can erase certain time blocks." Mark's face went pale. "That requires admin credentials." Graham's gaze snapped to Trent. Trent's smile turned brittle. "Sir, I don't know what that is." Graham's voice dropped, dangerous. "Mark, who has admin credentials?" Mark swallowed. "Trent and Dustin, and me." Graham's jaw clenched. Elias stepped closer to Trent. "Where's your phone?" Trent frowned. "What?" Elias held out his hand. "Phone! Now!" Trent's face hardened. "You can't!" Graham's voice cut through. "You will!" Trent hesitated, then pulled his phone from his pocket with shaking fingers. Elias took it, immediately placing it in a clear evidence bag Priya had handed him earlier, sealing it. Trent's voice rose. "This is insane!" Graham ignored him. "Jay, stop that, clean up!" Jay's fingers flew. "I can attempt, but if initiated remote, may require admin login," Mark said. "I can override," Graham snapped. "Do it," Mark typed. The warning flashed again. "Access denied. Admin remote session active." Jay's eyes widened. "Remote? From IT?" Graham's mind sharpened like a blade. Priya was in IT. "Elias," Graham said, "call Priya, now." Elias dialed. Priya answered immediately, voice tight. "Someone just tried to end my export process." Dustin's screen flashed. "He says it's a system glitch." Graham's voice went cold. "It's not a glitch, it's evidence destruction." Priya inhaled sharply. "I'm recording everything," Graham said. "We need a mirror capture now. Can you secure Dustin's admin access?" Priya's voice turned hard. "Already did. He's not leaving this room." Graham nodded. "Then we do plan B. Here." He turned to Mark. "Get me the storage unit, now. And I want it documented. Serial numbers, timestamps." Mark nodded fast. "Yes, sir." Trent's face twisted. "Mr. Kincaid, if you do this, you're going to violate guest privacy. There will be lawsuits." Graham's eyes locked on him. "If there are lawsuits, I'll pay them." Trent froze. Graham stepped closer, voice like ice. "But if you destroy evidence to frame an employee, I will make sure you never work in hospitality again." Trent's mouth opened and closed. Jay whispered, "Clean up still running." Graham's heart rate stayed steady. He didn't panic. Panic was a luxury the guilty relied on. He moved. "Mark," he said, "pull the network cable to the DVR storage. Isolate it. Now." Mark hesitated. "Sir, that will drop." "Do it," Graham said. "We can lose cameras for 10 minutes. We can't lose truth forever." Mark yanked the cable. The warning disappeared. Jay exhaled, shoulders dropping. "Stopped." Elias's voice was low. "Good call." Graham nodded once, then he looked at Trent again. "Now," Graham said quietly, "we find the second file." The mirror capture took 42 minutes. 42 minutes where Graham's life ran on a single thought. Hold the line. Priya arrived halfway through, breathless, laptop under her arm, eyes blazing. "Dustin tried to stall," she said. "He tried to open a remote session to the DVR. I have it recorded." Graham nodded. "Good. Chain of custody?" Priya held up a stack of forms. "Witness signatures, timestamps, video documentation. If anyone argues, we bury them in procedure." Elias smirked faintly. "My kind of burial." Jay monitored the cloning process, eyes locked on data transfer rates. "Copy is clean," he murmured. "No checksum error." Graham stood behind them, watching the progress bar crawl, ironically similar to the one Dustin had used to stall. The difference was this. This progress bar was the sound of truth coming back from the dead. When the mirror capture finished, Priya sealed the clone drive in evidence packaging marked with time and signature. "Now," she said, "we analyze without altering the original." Graham nodded. They moved to a secure conference room with no windows and a single locked door. Elias stood guard outside, like a man guarding a vault. Inside, Priya connected the cloned drive to a forensic laptop. Camera logs loaded, key card entries, door access, the housekeeping schedule history, every edit, every timestamp, and then there it was, a retention folder that shouldn't exist. Jay leaned in, eyes widening. "This is crash backup." Priya's eyebrows rose. "Hidden retention." Graham's voice was low. Second file. Jay nodded. Yes. Priya clicked carefully, like she was opening a bomb. The file loaded. A hallway camera feed. Grainy, slightly dark, but clear enough. Timestamp. The 40-minute window when the main camera went offline. Graham's jaw tightened. On screen, the service corridor outside the Voss suite appeared. Then, movement. A figure in a maintenance jacket walked briskly past, hood up, face partially hidden. He paused at the Voss door. A keycard beeped. The door opened. He slipped inside. Graham's eyes narrowed. That's not housekeeping. Jay leaned closer. No, that's maintenance-style jacket. Priya's voice was tight. Timestamp? Graham read it aloud. 2:17 a.m. Lena had been asleep by then. According to her schedule, she wasn't on 9. The figure came out 3 minutes later, and in his hand, something small, glinting. He tucked it in his pocket. Then he moved fast, down the corridor toward the service stairwell. Elias knocked softly from outside. Everything okay? Graham didn't look away from the screen. We've got movement. Priya clicked forward. Another angle. A service camera near the stairwell, grainier, but the figure's face turned for half a second, not clear enough for a perfect ID, but familiar enough to make Graham's stomach tighten, because it looked like someone he'd seen in security that morning. Priya froze the frame. Can we enhance? Carefully, Graham said. Priya nodded. Jay whispered, Audio? Graham frowned. Hallway cameras have audio? Jay nodded. Some do. For incident review. Priya clicked. A low hiss came through the speakers like distant air vents. Footsteps, a door, then voices, soft, confident, male, and Korean. Jay's face went still. He leaned closer, listening like his life depended on it. The voice on the recording spoke in Korean with casual cruelty, like the speaker assumed language was a private room. Jay translated as he listened, whispering each line in English, his voice growing colder with each word. He says, she's perfect, quiet, poor. Nobody will fight. Graham's hands clenched. Jay continued listening. He says, we make the camera die, then we put the ring where she will find it. Priya's eyes flashed. Planted evidence. Jay's jaw tightened. He says, Madeline wants it dramatic. She wants the story. Graham's eyes narrowed. So Madeline is in on it. Jay listened again, then translated the final blow. He says, second file stays hidden. Nobody checks crash backup. It overwrites tomorrow. Priya leaned back, breath sharp. They knew exactly what they were doing. Graham stared at the screen. A missing ring wasn't the point. The point was leverage, extortion, a performance designed to force the resort into a payout or to force control changes in the management structure. And Lena was the disposable piece. Graham felt heat rise in his chest, not the hot rage of violence, but the cold rage of a man realizing the world still ran on cruelty when people thought they could afford it. Priya broke the silence. We have enough to clear Lena. Graham nodded slowly. And enough to destroy Trent. Priya's eyes narrowed. Trent's voice is on the audio. Jay hesitated. Maybe one voice sounds like security supervisor. Another might be Trent, but we need confirm. Graham stared at the frozen frame of the figure's face. He didn't want to guess. He wanted certainty. He turned to Priya. Run voice comparison with known samples if possible. Priya nodded. We can pull staff training recordings, security radio logs. Graham looked at Jay. Can you identify the Korean speaker? Jay's eyes were sharp. Yes, I know that accent. He is Korean American, but his Korean is familiar. He uses slang like he works around Koreans often. Graham nodded. Good. Then he stood. Now, he said, voice steady, we confront them, and we do it where they can't twist it. Elias stepped inside. We should involve police. Priya nodded, but carefully. We present evidence clean. Otherwise, they claim tampering. Graham nodded. Agreed. He looked at the evidence packaging on the table like it was a holy object. Truth preserved. Then he remembered Ruth's words. Truth leaves a trail, and pride doesn't want to follow it. Graham said, "We're going to lead them down that trail in front of witnesses. If you want justice stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next wasn't just a scandal. It was a lesson in how truth fights back when someone refuses to let it die." Graham chose the battlefield, not the lobby, not the back office. He chose the VIP conference lounge, a private room with glass walls overlooking the resort's mountain view, reserved for board meetings and high-dollar negotiations. Because Madeline Voss didn't just want to win, she wanted an audience, so Graham gave her one, on his terms. He requested an emergency meeting under the pretense of guest security incident review. Trent couldn't refuse without looking guilty. Madeline couldn't resist without losing her dramatic stage. Graham invited the resort's general manager, security director, IT manager Dustin Hale, and Trent. And he invited the one person they didn't expect, Lena. When Lena walked into the lounge, she looked like she'd barely slept. Her uniform had been replaced by a simple sweater and jeans. She held her purse close like a shield. Madeline sat at the far end of the table, sunglasses on indoors, like she was too important for natural light. Trent sat stiffly beside Dustin, jaw tight. Mark Rell looked uneasy. The general manager, Catherine Lowell, looked like she wished she could disappear into the mountain view. Graham stood at the head of the table. Priya sat beside him, calm as a judge. Elias stood near the door, arms crossed. Graham didn't begin with accusations. He began with something more dangerous. He began with calm. "Thank you for coming," he said. "We're here to resolve the incident from this morning." Madeline's voice was sweet. "Finally." Graham nodded. "Yes, finally." He looked at Lena. "Ms. Park, do you understand why you're here?" Lena's voice was quiet. "To be blamed again." Graham's gaze stayed on her. "No," he said, "to be cleared." Madeline laughed. "Cleared? With what? The ring is still missing." Graham looked at Madeline. "Is it?" Madeline's smile faltered for half a second. Trent leaned forward. "Mr. Kincaid, with respect, this is becoming disruptive. We should handle this privately and—" Graham's voice stayed calm. "We are handling it privately. This is a private lounge. These are the decision makers, and Ms. Park is a human being." Silence fell. Graham slid a folder across the table toward Catherine Lowell. Inside are logs showing that Ms. Park was not scheduled for the Voss suite last night. Her schedule was altered at 6:12 a.m. this morning. Catherine's eyes widened. She opened the folder. Trent's face went pale. Madeline scoffed. "Schedules change." Priya's voice cut in. "Schedules can change. The question is why they were changed after a theft accusation." Dustin shifted in his seat. Graham continued. "We also have keycard logs showing entry into the Voss suite at 2:17 a.m. by a staff badge assigned to maintenance." Madeline's lips tightened. "Maybe maintenance checked something." Graham nodded as if considering. "Perhaps." Then he said, "We also have video footage." Trent froze. Mark Rell's eyes widened. Madeline's sunglasses tilted slightly as her head snapped up. "There was no footage." Graham's voice was soft. "There wasn't on the main camera." Then he looked at Jay, seated near the wall. Jay nodded. Graham continued. "But the system created a backup file during the so-called power flicker, a crash retention file." "The second file," Trent's mouth opened. "That's—" Priya held up a hand. "Mr. Morrow, I advise you not to speak until you understand what evidence exists." Trent's face flushed. He looked like a man realizing the trap was closing. Madeline leaned back, scoffing. "This is ridiculous." Graham nodded toward Priya. Priya connected a laptop to the screen on the wall. The hallway footage appeared. The room went still. They watched the figure in the maintenance jacket enter the Voss suite. They watched him exit. They watched the glint in his hand. Madeline's face stayed composed, but the muscle in her jaw twitched. Trent swallowed visibly. Dustin looked like he might vomit. Catherine Lowell whispered, "Oh my God." Graham paused the video at the moment the face turned toward the camera. Then he looked at Mark Rell. "Mark, do you recognize that jacket?" Mark's voice was tight. That's our maintenance issue jacket." Graham looked at Jay. "And the voice?" Jay's eyes were hard. "We have audio," Madeline's voice snapped. "Audio! You recorded me?" Graham's gaze stayed steady. "The camera recorded what happened in the corridor." Madeline's cheeks flushed. "Play it." Her confidence returned because she believed language was a shield. Priya pressed play. The room filled with soft Korean. Madeline's face stayed still like stone. Trent's face drained of color. Jay translated slowly, clearly, so there could be no misunderstanding. He says, "She's perfect, quiet, poor, nobody will fight." Lena's hand flew to her mouth. Graham didn't look at Lena. He kept his eyes on Madeline, watching the mask crack. Jay continued. He says, "We make camera die, then we put ring where she will find it." Catherine Lowell's hand shook over her coffee cup. Jay continued, voice colder. He says, "Madeline wants drama. She wants story." Madeline's voice rose, sharp. Priya paused the audio. Priya looked at Madeline calmly. "Ms. Voss, you can deny it," she said, "but you're about to learn something." Madeline's lips trembled with rage. "Learn what?" Priya's eyes were steel. "That language isn't invisibility." Graham leaned forward. "Ms. Voss," he said, "I'm giving you one chance." Madeline's chin lifted. "To do what?" "To return the ring," Graham said, "and to tell us who helped you." Madeline laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "You think you can threaten me?" Graham's voice was quiet. "I'm not threatening you. I'm offering you mercy." Madeline's smile vanished. "Mercy? Who do you think you are?" Graham's gaze didn't waver. "The man who can either handle this internally or hand it to law enforcement with a clean chain of custody." Trent's voice cracked. "Mr. Kincaid, this is going too far." Graham turned to Trent. "You tried to destroy evidence," Trent stammered. "No, Priya slid another document across the table. "Remote session logs, admin credentials used to initiate retention cleanup." Dustin's face collapsed. "I didn't..." Priya's eyes snapped to him. "Don't. Not here." Dustin's shoulders sagged. "Okay." Catherine Lowell looked like she was seeing her staff for the first time. "Trent," she whispered, "what did you do?" Trent's mouth moved, but no words came out. Graham stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't pound the table. He simply said, "The police are on their way." Madeline's eyes flashed. "You can't..." Graham's gaze cut her off. "I can," he said, "and I will." He looked at Lena. "Ms. Park, you're cleared." Lena stared at him, stunned. Graham continued, voice steady. "Not only are you cleared, you're being reinstated immediately, paid for missed hours. And if you want to pursue legal action, my counsel will connect you with resources." Lena's throat worked. I don't know what to say." Graham's voice softened. "Say you'll keep your head up." Tears finally spilled from Lena's eyes, silent and unstoppable. She wiped them quickly, embarrassed. Graham didn't let her be embarrassed. He looked at Catherine Lowell. "Catherine," he said, "if you want this resort to survive, you purge the rot. Starting now." Catherine nodded, stunned. "Yes." Madeline stood abruptly. "This is a setup. You're all conspiring." Graham's gaze stayed calm. "No," he said. "You were the one who conspired." Madeline's face twisted. "You don't understand who I am." Graham stepped closer, voice low. "I understand exactly who you are." Then he said, "And I understand who Lena is." He turned to Lena again. "She's someone you thought you could break." The door opened. 2 uniformed officers entered, followed by a plainclothes detective. Priya stood, calm and ready. "Detective," she said, "we have evidence of a staged theft, attempted evidence destruction, and coordinated harassment of an employee." The detective's eyes moved across the room, taking in faces. "Who's the complainant?" Graham nodded toward Lena. "She is." Lena flinched. Graham's voice softened. "You're not alone," he said. The detective stepped forward. "Ma'am, would you like to make a statement?" Lena looked at Graham. Graham nodded once. Lena inhaled, shaky. "Yes," she said, "I would." Madeline's mouth opened to scream, but for the first time that day, no one moved to protect her performance. Because the truth had entered the room, and it didn't care how loud she was. The investigation moved fast after that, not because justice always moved fast. Graham knew it didn't, but because Graham controlled resources, and he understood something most people didn't. When a system wants to delay truth, it uses time as a weapon. So he took time away from them. Within hours, Priya had provided the police with documented evidence packages, cloned drive, chain of custody forms, remote session logs, and schedule edit histories. Elias pulled security radio logs and voice samples. By midnight, a voice analysis confirmed what Graham already suspected. One of the Korean voices matched a security supervisor named Calvin Reed, a man Graham had seen in the lobby that morning, eager, smug, standing too close to Trent like a loyal dog. Calvin Reed was arrested at his apartment with the ring in his nightstand drawer, Madeline's ring, still in its velvet box, because the ring had never been lost. It had been the bait. Trent Morrow was arrested the next day when phone records and admin logs tied him to the attempted retention cleanup. Dustin Hale took a deal, providing testimony that Trent had pressured him, promising a promotion, threatening termination. Madeline Voss tried to play the victim. She hired attorneys who spoke in confident tones about defamation, privacy violations, breach of contract. Priya smiled through every meeting, because Priya didn't fear confident attorneys. She feared sloppy evidence, and they didn't have sloppy evidence. They had the second file. They had the audio. They had the trail. Madeline's lawyers eventually stopped smiling because the story was no longer rich woman robbed by immigrant maid. The story was wealthy guest orchestrate scheme to extort resort and destroy employee. And in the court of public opinion, where cameras were everywhere, Madeline's performance didn't look glamorous. It looked cruel. Lena didn't return to work immediately. Graham insisted she take paid leave. At first, Lena protested. "I need money," she said. Graham nodded. "And you'll have it," he said. "But you also need a chance to breathe." He met her at Ruth's diner 3 days later. Lena sat in the same booth by the window, hands wrapped around a coffee mug like it was warmth she didn't trust. Ruth stood behind the counter, watching, pretending not to. Graham slid into the booth across from Lena. Lena's eyes were tired but clearer now. "I keep thinking," Lena said quietly, "if you didn't come, what would happen?" Graham didn't pretend. "You'd be fired," he said, "and the story would follow you, and they'd sleep fine." Lena's fingers tightened around the mug. "Why are people like that?" Graham's gaze drifted to the window. Mountains, sky, distance. "Some people confuse power with permission," he said. Ruth walked over and set a plate of pancakes in front of Lena. "Eat," she said. "You're alive. That's worth syrup." Lena tried to smile and failed. Graham watched her, then said, "I want to offer you something." Lena stiffened. "I don't want charity." Graham nodded. "I'm not offering charity." He slid a document across the table. Lena looked down. It was a job offer, not housekeeping, a training program, front-of-house operations, scheduling, logistics, compliance, a pathway into management. Lena's eyes widened. I'm not qualified." Graham's voice was steady. "You know how the resort works better than most managers," he said. "You know where people hide mistakes. You know how to see what others ignore. That's qualification." Lena's throat tightened. "They'll hate me," Ruth snorted. "Let them," she said. "They hated you when you were quiet. Might as well be loud." Lena looked at Graham. "Why are you doing this?" Graham paused. He could have said it was good PR. He could have said it was an investment, but he didn't. He remembered the moment in the lobby, the phones, the humiliation. He remembered how close he'd been to walking away, telling himself it was a management issue. He remembered the sickness Ruth had named, and he remembered the small Bible in Lena's bag. So Graham said, "Because I don't want to build a fortune on people's fear." Lena stared at him. Ruth leaned on the table, eyes softer. "See," she murmured to Lena, "truth leaves a trail. Sometimes it leads to mercy." Lena's eyes filled again, but this time the tears didn't look like defeat. They looked like release. Over the next month, the resort changed in ways guests barely noticed, but staff felt in their bones. Graham didn't just fire Trent and call it done. He dismantled the structures that had allowed Trent to thrive. He implemented anonymous reporting channels managed by an external firm. He separated security oversight from hospitality management. He required dual authentication for retention settings. He installed independent auditing logs that notified an outside compliance monitor whenever footage was accessed or deleted. He also did something that made certain executives uncomfortable. He held a staff meeting, every department, every shift, and spoke to them directly. No PR script, no polished language. He stood on a small stage in the employee cafeteria, the smell of lunch trays in the air. Lena stood near the front, nervous but standing tall. Ruth sat in the back, arms crossed, as if daring Graham to disappoint her. Graham looked at the faces. People who cleaned rooms, fixed boilers, cooked food, washed sheets. He said, "You work in a building designed to make people feel small. Guests will treat you like you're invisible. Some managers will treat you like you're replaceable." He paused, then he said, "You are not invisible, and you are not replaceable." A murmur moved through the room. Graham continued, "What happened to Lena should never happen here again. Not to her, not to anyone." He looked at Lena. "We failed you," he said. Lena's eyes widened. Graham didn't look away. "And we're going to earn back what we broke." For the first time, the staff applauded, not because they were told to, but because they felt something rare, a powerful man admitting responsibility. Afterward, Ruth approached Graham in the cafeteria. She didn't smile, she just said, "Good." Graham nodded. "Not enough," he said. Ruth's eyes softened slightly. "It's a start." Then she tapped his chest lightly with one finger, right over his heart. "And don't forget," she said. Graham already knew the words. "The truth always leaves a trail," he said. Ruth nodded, "and pride hates following it." Madeleine Voss's downfall wasn't loud in the way she expected. There was no dramatic handcuff moment in a lobby full of cameras. There were court filings, quiet hearings, a judge who didn't care about her scarf or her diamonds. Her lawyers tried to argue that the crash backup footage was an invasion of privacy. Bria reminded the court that the footage was in a service corridor, recorded by the resort's own systems, preserved under documented investor audit. The judge denied the motion. Madeleine tried to paint Lena as a troublemaker. The prosecution played the audio, and then, in the silence that followed, Madeline's voice appeared in a second recording, one the police recovered from Calvin Reed's phone. A voicemail she had left him, in English, arrogant and clear. "Make it dramatic," Madeline's recorded voice said. "Make her cry. I want them desperate." That was when the courtroom stopped being a legal battle and became something simpler, a truth moment. Madeline Voss was sentenced for conspiracy, harassment, and fraud-related charges tied to attempted extortion. Trent Morrow received a sentence that included restitution and a permanent professional ban from managing staff in licensed hospitality environments. Calvin Reed went to prison. Dustin Hale lost his job and his reputation, but avoided prison by cooperating. Graham didn't celebrate. He didn't give interviews. He didn't post triumphant statements. He simply ensured the staff who had been afraid now had tools to protect themselves. Because justice to Graham wasn't a trophy, it was maintenance. 6 months later, Lena walked through the lobby again, this time wearing a blazer and an ID badge that read, Operations Coordinator. Guests still didn't notice her the way they should, but staff did. They nodded with respect. They smiled with something like pride. And when Lena passed the concierge desk, she saw a young housekeeper hesitating, eyes wide, holding a clipboard like it was too heavy. The girl looked like Lena had looked once, new, unsure, afraid of making a mistake that would cost her everything. Lena stopped. She smiled gently. "You okay?" The girl nodded too fast. "Yes, I don't want to get in trouble." Lena's voice softened. "Listen," she said, "you're allowed to ask questions here." The girl blinked. "Really?" Lena nodded. "Really?" Then Lena reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a little plastic card. On it was printed the anonymous reporting hotline and the words, "Truth leaves a trail. Follow it." Ruth's mantra, now a policy. The girl stared at it, then at Lena. "What does it mean?" Lena smiled. "It means you're not alone." That night, Graham sat alone in his penthouse suite, windows open to mountain air, city lights far away. The resort was quiet, humming like a machine finally running clean. He held a small object in his hand, not the ring, something else. A plain wooden cross keychain Ruth had pressed into his palm one day without asking. He'd tried to refuse. Ruth had fixed him with that stare. "It ain't jewelry," she'd said. "It's a reminder." A reminder. Graham had spent his life believing he could control everything with strategy and money. But that case, Lena, the second file, the audio, had reminded him that systems didn't just need clever people. They needed conscience. He stared at the cross for a long moment. Then quietly, he did something he hadn't done in a long time. He bowed his head. Not for show, not for anyone else. Just for truth. Just for mercy. Just for the kind of justice that didn't crush the weak, to make the powerful feel safe. His voice was low, barely more than breath. "Jesus," he whispered, "help me keep choosing the right thing, even when it costs." No sermon, no theatrics. Just a man asking God to keep his heart from going cold again. When he lifted his head, the mountains were still there, the resort was still there. But something in Graham felt different, lighter, as if truth didn't just clear Lena. It had cleared something in him too. Weeks later, Ruth's diner was packed. A Friday night rush, plates clattering, coffee pouring, laughter mixing with tired voices. Graham sat at his usual booth by the window, still not trying to look important. Ruth slid a mug toward him. "You look less haunted," she said. Graham's mouth twitched. "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation," Ruth said. "Compliments cost extra." Graham chuckled quietly. Lena walked in, wearing her blazer, hair neatly pulled back, eyes steady. Her son, Eli, followed behind, taller than the photo in Lena's bag had suggested. Eli spotted Graham and hesitated. Lena nudged him gently. "Go say hello." Eli walked up, awkward but brave. "Mr. Kincaid," he said. Graham stood and shook his hand. "Eli." Eli swallowed. "My mom says you helped." Graham glanced at Lena, then back at Eli. "Your mom helped herself," he said. "She told the truth when it was easier to be quiet." Eli's eyes widened. "People were mean to her." Graham's expression softened. "They were," he said, "but she didn't become mean back." Eli looked down. "I would have." Lena's voice was gentle. "I wanted to," she admitted. Ruth snorted from behind the counter. "We all want to." Graham looked at Eli. "You know what real strength is?" he asked. Eli shook his head. Graham nodded toward Lena. "It's standing up without turning into what hurt you." Eli stared at his mom, and for the first time, he looked proud in a way that didn't need words. Ruth leaned over the counter. "All right," she said, pointing a spatula at Graham. "You done fixing my town for today?" Graham smiled. "Not done," he said, "just trying." Ruth nodded once, satisfied. Then she said, loud enough for the booth to hear, "And remember." Graham and Lena said it together, almost like a prayer. "The truth always leaves a trail." Ruth's eyes softened. "Good," she said. "Now eat your food before it gets cold." In the end, the ring, the thing that had sparked the whole fire, became something else. It was returned to Madeline as part of evidence disposition, then seized as restitution, then sold to fund a small employee protection program Graham created, an emergency fund for staff facing retaliation or wrongful accusations. The ring's shine became meals, rent payments, legal consultations. It became proof that luxury could be repurposed, that cruelty could be reversed, that someone's attempt to break a woman could become the very thing that lifted her higher. And Lena? She didn't become a symbol. She became a person again, a mother, a worker, a leader. She laughed more. She slept better. She stopped checking over her shoulder when she walked into work. And when she trained new employees, she told them something Graham had learned too late. "Never assume the powerful are right," Lena would say, voice calm. "Assume the truth is quiet and go find it." Because truth, she learned, always left a trail. You just needed someone brave enough to follow it. Drop a like if you caught the detail that exposed everything. The second file wasn't luck. It was the system's own fail-safe, refusing to let a lie erase the truth. A year after the scandal, Graham sat in another boardroom, this one in the city, high above streets that glowed at night like circuitry. The resort's profits were up, not because they had crushed complaints, but because staff turnover had dropped, service quality had improved, and guest satisfaction had risen. People liked staying in places where the atmosphere felt safe, even if they didn't know why. A board member cleared his throat. "Graham, you took a huge risk," he said. "You could have settled quietly, protected the brand." Graham looked at him. "We did protect the brand," he said. "We protected it from becoming a lie." The board member frowned. "But you empowered staff. You opened channels that could be abused." Graham's gaze stayed steady. "Any tool can be abused," he said. "That's why we build checks, not silence." The board member leaned back, unconvinced. Graham didn't argue. He didn't need approval anymore. He had learned what it cost to ignore injustice, and he had decided he would rather pay the cost of doing right. On a cold winter morning, snow dusted the resort's pine trees. The lobby gleamed as usual. A wealthy guest walked in, barking at a young bellhop. "Move faster!" the guest snapped. The bellhop flinched. Before the guest could say more, Catherine Lowell, the general manager, stepped forward, calm and firm. "Sir," she said, "we treat staff with respect here." The guest blinked, offended. "Excuse me?" Catherine's smile was polite, unyielding. "We treat staff with respect," she repeated, "or we don't host you." The guest sputtered, but then he noticed something. Not the chandelier, not the marble, something else. The quiet confidence in the staff's posture, the way security stood, not eager to bully, but steady to protect. The way the hotel's energy felt, different. The guest swallowed, muttered, "Fine," and walked away. The bellhop exhaled, stunned. Catherine looked at him gently. "You're okay," she said. The bellhop nodded, eyes wide. And across the lobby, Graham, visiting quietly, watched it all. He didn't smile big. He simply felt a quiet satisfaction, not victory, not revenge, just the rare sense that a system had been corrected, that truth had been followed, that someone vulnerable had not been sacrificed to keep powerful people comfortable. That was justice, and justice, done right, didn't just punish, it healed.